Jai Sri Ram, friends. Welcome to Bharat Marg. Dr. Adityanjee, welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Bharat Marg. Good to see you after a while. And it's going to be an incredible discussion today, folks. It's going to be about Saudi Arabia. And, one side the liquor sale is open, other side the schools, Ramayana and Mahabharata are being taught. What is happening in Saudi Arabia? Why the Islamist radicals are jittery? Okay, we will discuss about that. But before going further, friends, please make sure to like the video, comment on the video, share the video with as many people as you can, because with your support only we can reach out to many people around the world. And other than that, we also send one dharmic message every day now with multiple languages. It goes out. You can subscribe now by sending a WhatsApp to +16479644790, and our dharmic message goes in Tamil, Hindi, English, and in a month we are starting in service in Telugu, all for free. Okay, you can join and make sure to subscribe the channel Bharat Marg if you didn't already, and press the notification bell to stay connected. And if you have any question, you can ask Dr. Adityanjee. He is an expert in foreign affairs, and we are so excited and glad to have him. Dr. Adityanjee, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sundarji. And it's a pleasure to be on Mark today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We are honored to have you. Okay. And Doctor, what is really happening? Big blow to Islamic radicals. Saudi Arabia liquor sale. Okay. That's a news. And also that is happening. The Ramayana, Mahabharata, they started speaking in the schools, which doesn't even happen in India many times. You know what I mean? Till today. And what's the real plan of Salman? What is really happening? Why the Islamists are jittery? Can you please let us know about it?
There is a little bit of echo coming, so I don't know how to deal with that, but I will try to answer your questions. Let me see if I can put my headphones and the echo goes down. Okay.
Absolutely. You can start it. I put myself in mute. You can start now.
So, Saudi Arabia, as we know it, the modern state was founded in 1932 with House of Saud, or descendants of bin Saud, uh, as the ruling dynasty. But for last 200 years, there has been a pact between a extremist Sunni sect called Wahhabism, Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab, his followers that had a very strict interpretation of Islam. They were part of a Salafi movement in Saudi Arabia. They had a pact with this House of Saud. So they were mutually supporting each other. And 200 years ago, the ruling family's original, sort of warlord was not the king of Saudi Arabia as we know it. They were small principalities or emirats under suzerainty of the Ottoman Empire. And the mutual pact was that the family of Saud will support Wahhabi version of Islam, which was very strict version of Islam, and they will support the Wahhabis will support the ruling family, their political power. So the political power was deriving from the religious patronage of the Wahhabi sect. And as you know, that Wahhabi sect became more and more puritanical and more extremist, and with the petrodollars that were coming into Saudi Arabia, radicalism was being exported all over the world. including to India. These loudspeakers in mosque, they were basically funded through Saudi money. Saudi money went to West, infiltrated universities, and essentially the Wahhabi sect and Saudi Arabia, the government, the princes, supported radicalization abroad. And to the extent that on 9/11, out of 19 would be hijackers, 15 were from Saudi Arabia. So that tells you the extent of the problem. If you look at the politics, geopolitics in the WANA region, which is West Asia, North Africa region, so called Middle East, uh, anytime there has been a popular uprising against the government, the people who are in the opposition in the uprising have used Islam to gain political power. And this happened in Iran. This is happening in Syria when against Dr. Bashar al Assad there was a revolt. It was an Islamist movement. The settled monarchies like UAE, or for that matter Saudi Arabia, are now very wary of these fringe radical Islamist groups because they know that under the name of Islam they will capture power and displace and eliminate the royal families. So the realization has dawned upon Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And since he is the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia at this point in time, his father is cognitively impaired following stroke. All the real power lies with this young man who is trying to de radicalize and reform Saudi Arabia. That is one of the goals, but the other goal is to prepare Saudi Arabia for a post oil economy. Right now, Saudi Arabian economy is on fossil fuels, hydrocarbons, basically. But there is a finite amount of oil reserves. The world will run out of oil reserves. What will Saudi Arabia do after that? So MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, is working on that. And in that process, he has started to do gradual but very slow domestic reforms. Although MBS did get the rap for killing this journalist uh, in Turkey, Saudi expatriate journalist who had gone to Turkey for getting a marriage license, for killing that. The name of the journalist was, I think, Khashoggi. Last name was,
Killing and eating, killing and they cook and eat.
yes, killing and dissolving in acid his whole body, so the body disappeared. Uh, Turkey had accused Mohammed bin Salman. So there were some despotic and authoritarian tendencies, no doubt, but he is trying to reform Saudi Arabia. So around 2018, 2019, Saudi Arabia for the first time granted permission for a limited permission for women to drive. Women were not allowed to drive. It's nothing written in Islam that they cannot drive, but they were not allowed to drive. So there has been a gradual relaxation. The foreign women, the tourists, they can drive. Domestically, women can drive if they have a male partner sitting next to them, or if they have the abaya or the burqa or the hijab and hair is not showing. So there has been a slow this thing. Also, you may or may not have realized that Saudi Arabia did participate in International Yoga Day. And there's a yoga movement in Saudi Arabia as part of health and wellness movement. So they are imbibing influences that were previously considered non-Islamic or Hindu influence or whatever. The relationship between Saudi Arabia and India, in fact, has become very good, to the consternation of our next door neighbor, who initially used to think that they have kind of first right to Saudi Arabia's political patronage. In fact, relationship of India with Saudi Arabia is much better than relationship of Saudi Arabia with Pakistan. Our bilateral trade is around $54 billion. Majority, there is a trade balance in favor of Saudi Arabia. But there are other realities. 2.4 million Indians are resident in Saudi Arabia. They are doing various jobs in Saudi Arabia, and they send their remittances from Saudi Arabia to India. Not all of them are of a particular faith, so there is a little bit of diversity. Also, there are 100,000 Indian students in Saudi Arabia that are getting some education in Saudi Arabia, which people don't understand and realize the extent of relationship. Now, admittedly, most of these students may be from Kerala or belonging to a particular religious group, but nevertheless, there is a strong presence of Indians in Saudi Arabia, 2.4 million and 100,000 students. So, as I said, that MBS is gradually doing domestic reforms, and as part of that domestic reforms and preparing for a post-oil economy, you have to promote tourism. If you have to promote tourism, you have to allow women to drive. And as part of that drive, they have to allow liquor sales domestically.
Yeah, Doctor, question to you. Ramayana Mahabharata, you said about yoga already. Ramayana Mahabharata is being taught in the Saudi Arabia schools now. We know Morari Babu goes there a lot and he has a tremendous amount of following in Saudi Arabia. Many people don't like him too much, but anyway, he does. Um, but now the question is the Bible also being taught there or only Ramayana Mahabharata?
I am not sure whether there's a general reform and they are allowing. One must realize that, because they claim to be the people of the book, so there may be, possibility of Bible being allowed because it's considered part of the Semitic religion, same origins kind of thing. But I think this is a very well thought out reform that Ramayana and Mahabharata are being taught. The other thing you probably did not realize that MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, now is saying that they will go back to their pre-Islamic roots and will allow the worship of three pre-Islamic goddesses. In the pagan Saudi Arabia, they used to worship a moon god, and this moon god had three daughters who were deities or devis, and their names were Allah, Al Uzza, and Mana or Manat. There's a Urdu word Mannat that comes from that goddess, who was very strong and granted boons. So Allah or Allat was one of the chief goddesses in pagan Saudi Arabia. So they're rediscovering their pre-Islamic roots and allowing that part of their culture and history that they had vociferously denied as part of Jahiliyyah, part of ignorance. So there is a softening. And you might have seen recently that Minister of State for External Affairs, Meenakshi Lekhi, went to Saudi Arabia on a bilateral visit. And she also visited the two holy sites, Mecca and Medina. And when she went there, she did not wear
Smriti Irani, yeah.
abaya.
That's right.
Yeah, Smriti Irani, you're right, and Meenakshi Lekhi also went there. So, in other words, there is a change in Saudi Arabia that they are allowing for cultural practices of important nations. And Saudi Arabia realizes that India is a rising power. India has become a de facto Middle Eastern or West Asian power. India is part of I2U2. India is part of the IMEC, the proposed IMEC North South corridor. So we are seeing changes in attitude of Saudi Arabia that is trying to give up the highly radicalized Wahhabi stance. And I think you will see that under the leadership of Mohammed bin Salman, there will be some relaxations in the Islamic norms, and Wahhabis will be given less and less importance. Saudi Arabia does not want to be targeted by FATF or the internal national community as the fountainhead of terrorism. They were under severe pressure because 15 out of 19 hijackers on 9/11 were of Saudi origin. And because at that time, the President George Bush, he was supported financially, his election campaign by Saudi Arabia, they hushed that at that point in time. But in the current circumstances, the real threat of these Islamists, the Wahhabis, is the House of Saud. Because if they have to take over the power, they have to capture the power. How would they capture the power? They have to displace the ruling family. And I know, and you know that in Islamic states, transition of power is through use of force, not by democracy. Saudi Arabia is not a democracy, it is a monarchy, absolute monarchy. So, having done threat analysis, threat perception, it appears that Prince Mohammed bin Salman has already decided that harsh version of Wahhabi Islam or Salafi movement is not in the long term interest of Saudi Arabia or, for that matter, House of Saud. So they will continue to do reform gradually. And part of that reform is, accepting other cultures, teaching of Mahabharata, Ramayana, relaxing the sale of liquor for foreigners to promote tourism, allowing women more freedom, which was very strictly controlled, uh, accepting and promoting yoga. So there are a lot of things happening. In the UAE, which is next door to Saudi Arabia, and UAE and Saudi Arabia have good relationships. UAE has gone a step further and has established the first Hindu temple in UAE, which Prime Minister is going to inaugurate. That's a BAPS Swaminarayan sect temple, and the ruling family, the ruling Amir, and they actually celebrated that by singing Jai Shri Ram, you know.
That's one question here. Okay, that is now the news is coming that Mecca, the Mecca city, will be isolated. Okay, where the pilgrims can go, but the outside of Mecca and Medina, will be the corridor, the international corridor, where it will be like London. Means you will have nightclubs, you will have means it's absolutely it will be promoted as a holiday destination kind of. How do you see this?
I think it is again part of the same relaxation and becoming part of the international community. Yes, Saudi Arabia was benefiting quite a lot because they were the custodian of the two holy mosques. And with the annual Hajj, they were making a lot of money. But there's limit to that. And what you are seeing is that they are trying to, besides their traditional version of Islam and Hajj and all, they want to get more share of tourism. They want Saudi Arabia to be part of an international commercial corridor. So, all these activities are telling you that Saudi Arabia is going to give up its harsh, austere, radical Islamic, Salafist, Wahhabi image and wants to become a modern, tolerant, liberal nation. Of course, under power, you don't expect democracy to come in Saudi Arabia because that will mean end of the family of House of Saud. But I think these changes, these reforms in Saudi Arabia are welcome, and we should actually promote and encourage them to go for further reforms. In fact, as our relationship is improving, we should maybe start a endowed chair in Sanskrit language in one of the Saudi Arabian universities, an endowed chair in Hindi in one of the Saudi Arabian universities. And so these are the further steps besides yoga, you know, to culturally influence Saudi thinking, their value system, because in pre Islamic Saudi Arabia, they were very appreciative of India. Actually, there were poems written in the honor of King Vikramaditya by the uncle of the originator of Islam. So there is already a goodwill. There was some dipping of relationship because of Wahhabi influences on the Saudi ruling family. Now that faction of the ruling family has been sidelined, and you have this guy who is in his 30s, Mohammed bin Salman, who has taken upon himself to reform the society at all levels, not just the economy, but also the culture and social norms. Of course, it is being done in a very slow, incremental manner. It's not going to be a revolution.
Not in Trump way,
Yes.
but in Modi way. Absolutely, absolutely. There are lots of. That's a very, very interesting fact which I want to put it for the viewers here. That is, the Murari Babu has donated the biggest donation to Ram Mandir, construction, and it is the collection from his followers, and everybody knows his followers. A majority they are from the Gulf area, especially from Saudi Arabia. So yeah, you know, uh, it's a very interesting fact.
I think in the past, the Saudi influence in India was through use of their petrodollars, patronizing Islamic organizations, spending money on, renovation of mosques for putting loudspeakers in the mosques and things like that. But I think they are realizing now that that part of the story is over. All over the world, mosques have become suspect because of encouragement of radical activities. So Saudi Arabia is going beyond that and trying to de-Wahhabize the version of Islam that Saudi people practice and trying to give a much more liberal face to the country so that international investors, international tourists accept Saudi Arabia in a post oil economy because oil has a finite life. You know, Saudi Arabia was essentially a desert prior to discovery of oil. And with the discovery of the oil, they become overnight rich. They did not know what to do. They misuse their monies, and that money will run out at some point in time. Their people, their citizens need to be educated in other spheres so that they can start industries and deal with, knowledge economy, you know. So for that, you have to do a lot of changes.
Absolutely. Doctor, thank you very much for joining our show and putting your point of view. This means a lot, and your input always adds value. We highly appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Till then, Jai Sri Ram,
Jai
Jai
Shri
Jai
Ram.
Sri Ram. And I will request the viewers to put any comments. What they do they agree with what Dr. Saab said? Do you have any questions? Put it in the comment area, and it shall get answered. And looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Till then, Jai Sri Ram, Jai Jai Sri Ram.